get close enough to him for that touch. When a large crowd was gathered around him by the lake shore, verse 22 of chapter 5, one of the synagogue officials named Jairus came up and fell at his feet and told him about his little daughter. And he said, she's at the point of death. Please come and lay your hands on her. Everybody knew that's how he healed. He put his hands on you. It was about touch. He touches you, you touch him. And in the middle of that crowd, while Jairus is hoping Jesus will leave and come, a woman appears who has a hemorrhage for 12 years. And she's heard about Jesus in verse 27, and she's convinced that if she can just touch him, she'll get well, verse 28 says. So she did, and she got well. Chapter 6, verse 5, he could do no miracle there in his own hometown because of their unbelief, except that he laid his hands on a few sick people and healed them. Verse 56 of chapter 6, wherever he entered villages or cities or countryside, they were laying the sick in the marketplaces, imploring him that they might just touch the fringe of his cloak, and as many as touched it were being cured. There's something very tender about this, something very compassionate. Jesus doesn't keep his distance. He's not like the leaders of Israel. He touches people. People touch him. This is the touchable Son of God. There's something tender about that. There's something compassionate about that. That's the heart of God. God is not indifferent. God is not transcendently indifferent. God is not detached. Well, I love what it says in Hebrews, that he is touched with the feelings of our infirmities. And his being touched in the heart with compassion showed up in the incarnation with a physical touch. That's the personal touch that God wants to render in the life of every person who comes to him. He responds. They knew that's how he healed. He responds, verse 23, taking the blind man by the hand. He brought him out of the village. And after spitting on his eyes and laying his hands on him, he asked him, do you see anything? He did what no self-respecting religious leader would do, took a blind man by the hand. Realizing, of course, that blind people need to be led, he brought him out of the village for isolation and for privacy. And then he did what he did with the deaf man in chapter 7 and the blind man in John 9. He spit on his eyes and laid his hands on him. Why does he do this? I don't know the answer to that other than to say this is a symbol of the transfer of the power from him to the man. The touch, the saliva coming out of his own mouth, touching the man, symbolized the transfer of power. It's not a bogus magic concoction. The power is in Christ. The power is in Christ. It flows from him to the eyes, from him to the ears, so that there can be sight and hearing. Now, this is the one miracle in all the four Gospels where Jesus asks the healed person a question. He asks him a question. Do you see anything? This is the only two-stage miracle. That is to say, where Jesus, in two touches, heals a man. One time he put mud on a man's eyes, and the man had to go and wash it off, but it wasn't until he washed it off that he could see. Here the man sees in two stages. This is the only such miracle. And it's the only one in which Jesus asks the man to describe what has happened to him. So at the end of verse 23, he says, do you see anything? And he looked up. Now, that's a little misleading, he looked up, because you don't know whether he's healed if you read he looked up, because look up kind of means lift your head to us. The actual verb, anablepsos, means, blepo is to see. He lifted up to see, would be a better way to translate it. He regained his sight. It is the exact same verb used in chapter 10, verses 51 and 52 to describe the healing of blind Bartimaeus. same verb. And in that case, it's translated regaining sight. So what it really is saying is he could see. It's the same verb used in John 9, verses 11, 15, and 18 to describe the man born blind that Jesus healed. It's the word that means he regained his sight. He saw. Compound verb. He looked up in the sense that he lifted up his eyes and saw. And he says that, I see men. In the Greek it says, I see the men. The men. He knew that Jesus was associated with the men, the apostles, the disciples who were with him, who had come across with him in the boat, who were with him for this period of training, who would go to Judea with him, and who would become a part of the foundation of the church on the day of Pentecost, the apostles. I see the men. Maybe in the conversation going outside the village, he found out who the men were. I see the men. However, I see them like trees walking around. What is that trying to say? They're out of focus. How about that? Now, if you're blind, even if you were born blind, you basically know what a person is like, right? And you know that there's a similarity between a tree and a person. Persons are vertical and so are trees. And his experience indicated to him that he could see the men, but they were not distinguishable from the trees, which means there was not a clear focus. It was indistinct, imperfect sight. Verse 25, then he laid his hands on his eyes again. And he looked intently and was restored and began to see everything clearly. Three words are used there, three verbs are used there to describe what happened to this man after the second touch. He touched his eyes again. This is the only place in the four Gospels where Jesus did a healing in two touches. And every compound verb that could be used to describe seeing is used in this passage, about five of them. It's all about sight from every aspect. And the two words for eyes are used. And the second touch brings a clinical healing in the most magnanimous way. His eyesight was restored to what it should be by the Creator himself.
You're listening to John.
It's not enough food to go around, Jesus. You need to send them away. How many times have I sent away something that God put in my life because I caught a thought that I'm not enough? They wandered around and around and around in the wilderness for 40 years, not because of their enemy, but because of their thought. And then even sometimes when things are going good, I got this thought. I don't know where it comes from. I don't think it's God. I don't think it is. It's hard to tell sometimes. Because it's not like he talks like this. I don't even know what that was. I'm glad he doesn't talk like that. That was super weird. He doesn't sound like Morgan Freeman. It's just a thought. Come on, if God sounded like Morgan Freeman, you could do it. If he narrated your life like that, you could do it. You could make it. You would go to sleep and wake up and just be ready for the day. But it comes like a thought. You know, even when it's going good, it won't last. They'll leave you too. You can't count on them. Then you sabotage the gift because you're not secure in it. Because even while it's happening, you don't believe it's real. This is my thoughts. I don't know where I caught them. I had a good mom, a good dad. I mean, they weren't perfect, don't get me wrong. I wish I could trace it back to just one traumatic event. I think that would be easier. Not enough. Where'd that thought come from? I'm not sure where it comes from, but I know where it takes me. And when I look back on the seasons of my life that I was so deep in depression, oh, yeah. And I know the Bible verses. Yeah, I know them better than you. Let's have a quoting contest. Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. See my hand motions? I know the verse. Rejoice in the Lord always. And then Paul says, I will say it again, rejoice. Well, you can say it as many times as you want to, Paul. I'm sad right now, and I can't find my way out. And so now I'm fighting on the level of my feelings. But watch this. Before it became a feeling, look, even Paul, it wasn't just like Moses was a bad leader. Even Paul had to fight against opposing voices and thought systems that undermined the essence of the grace of God in the gospel. Even in the churches that he started, even in the church at Corinth, he would write to that church, and what would happen to them was they would be led astray, or the word he likes to use in 2 Corinthians is deceived. He says, I fear that you're being deceived by the power of suggestion. He uses the example, he says, like Eve was deceived by the serpent. You remember that story? When God said, you can eat any of this. And then she caught a thought from a snake. She allowed something that was beneath her to speak to her. And she caught a thought. See, I never had a snake slither up to me and talk to me. I wish I did. I wish it was a snake that I could chop the head off of it. It's a thought, and I have to live with this, and I have to deal with it. And the serpent said to Eve, did God really say? You see it? He introduces a doubt into the possibility and potential of faith, causing her to focus on what is not available rather than what is. And Paul says, I'm afraid that you will be deceived, because there's these spies in the church at Corinth, and they're leading the Christians astray. They're doing it by the power of thought. They are introducing the thought into the church that you need something other than Christ to justify you. He says, I fear that you have been led astray from your pure devotion to Christ. And pure is the right word. That's the important word. Pure. It's that uncontaminated place that you access occasionally, where you know that God's got you and everything is going to be all right. You ever just felt that and you had no reason to, and you didn't even have the facts to back it up? You ever just felt that, like, wow, I feel like I'm going to make it and God's going to do it. And I just feel, and I can't even prove it on a flow chart or anything like that. But I just, what happens is the enemy deceives you. He can't take what God gave you. You know that, right? I need to make sure you know that. He can't take what God gave you. But if he can get you to catch a thought that opposes it, he can keep you so weak that you will not walk into it. And this is what he says to the church at Corinth, because they got spies running around introducing lies to the church. They got thoughts that oppose the knowledge of God. In fact, that's how he phrases it. In 2 Corinthians 10, verse 4, he says, the weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. What's a stronghold? In military terms, it's a place that you go to seek refuge. A stronghold, where you set up to do a battle where the enemy can't get to you. Or it can become a place where the enemy traps you in. He says, what happens in a physical battle can happen mentally, spiritually, emotionally to any one of us at any time. See, because it is with the thought that I can experience God. I can catch a thought of Jesus and his grace for me and his love for me and his mercy toward me. And that thought can move me to worship him in the beauty of holiness, in the splendor of his magnificence. In fact, I want to say this. One thought of Jesus can lift you above any wave of worry. One thought of Jesus. Have you been having trouble breathing this week? Get a thought on your mind of the goodness of God. You see that battle he brought you through. You see that way he made for you. And just one thought of Jesus. How many know one thought can lift me out of the pit? One thought. But a stronghold can also ensnare you. A thought, I'm not enough. A thought, I wonder what they're thinking about me right now.
They had gone to buy, and they had got what they bought, but they also got their money back, which means it could have looked like they stole it. And they were afraid that this might be an international crisis between Egypt and Israel. And they came unto Jacob their father unto the land of Canaan, for it had not yet been called Israel, the land had not, and told him all that befell unto them, saying, the man who is the Lord of the land spake roughly to us and took us for spies of the country. And we said unto him, we are true men, we are no spies. We be 12 brethren, sons of our father. One is not, and the youngest is this day with our father in the land of Canaan. And the man, the Lord of the country, said unto us, hereby shall I know that ye are true men. Leave one of your brethren here with me, and take for food for the famine of your households, and be gone. And bring your youngest brother unto me, then shall I know that ye are no spies, but that ye are true men. So will I deliver you your brother, and ye shall traffic in the land. And it came to pass, and it came to pass, and it came to pass, as they emptied their sacks, that behold, every man's bundle of money was in his sacks. And when both they and their father saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. And Jacob their father said unto them, me have ye bereaved of my children. Now I want you to listen closely to what Jacob says. Jacob says, me have ye grieved of my children. Joseph is not, he's already dead. And Simeon is not, you left him in Egypt. And ye will take Benjamin away. All these things are against me. And Reuben spake unto his father, saying, slay my 2 sons if I bring him not to thee. Deliver him into my hand, and I will bring him to thee again. And he said, my son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is left alone. If mischief befall him by the way in the which ye go, then shall ye bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave. The bumpy road to better. Now, we are entering into this text at a time in Jacob's life that this is not a comprehensive discussion of Jacob, because we are introduced to Jacob in the womb of his mother. He is struggling in the womb of his mother. We watch him as he grows as a boy and cheats Esau out of his birthright. We watch him mature into a young man, and on a mountain called Peniel wrestles with God. We watch Jacob find a place called Bethel, the house of God, and then later come back and call it El Bethel, the God of the house. And we watch him grow, but he is now an old man. His sons have grown to manhood. They have had a family that has withstood much sorrow. They have had tests and trials along the way. Jacob has married the love of his life, And he has also been married to Leah. Leah was the way he was tricked by Laban, and he has birthed children by both Leah and Rachel and a concubine, and he has 12 sons. He has lost those women, they're gone. He has lost Rachel, the love of his life. He has lost Joseph. They have brought back the bloody coats of sin from the coat of many colors that he has made for his beloved son, and he has lost him. You don't get old without having suffered loss. Yeah, you every year brings some sort of challenge with it. There is a certain sobriety that comes upon you with age, because as you go along the way, you gain some things and you lose some things. You win some battles and you lose some battles. And wisdom develops in the life of those who have capitalized on their pain to draw conclusions. And young people are amazed at your wisdom, but if you keep living, wisdom will teach you a few things. It will speak to you about some things. It will cause you to understand some things. Now Jacob is an old man, and if what is left of his family, he has managed to hold them together. And they still respect him, though they are grown men with children themselves. And when we enter into the text, there is a famine in the land, and Jacob has sold his sons. You will not defeat the famine looking at each other. Did you hear what I'm saying? Watch how Jacob handles the famine. Because my first point is the famine. And until you can deal with the famine, you will never get to better. Because the famine is a part of your journey. How you react to the famine determines whether you make it to the food. You've got to be aggressive. You can't just pray against the famine. You've got to do something. Jacob says you can't just pray against it. You can't just look at each other. You can't stay in the same spot and do the same things that you've always done and expect to get a different result, because we're in a famine and you've got to take action. And we don't understand that today. We don't understand the human requirement in the miracles of God. As much as we have read about the miracles of God, we walk away with praise to God, but absolve ourselves of human responsibility. As if God were going to act outside of human effort, when God has created us to be collaborative in the miraculous. Oh, I'm talking already. He wants us to be collaborative in the miraculous, that we have a responsibility to take action and to be aggressive about resolving issues. Just because you're spiritual doesn't mean you get to pray for a job and stay at home. I'm just going to pray. If the Lord wants me to have the job, he'll give me a job. I'm just going to watch TV and hit the remote control and believe God for better. You'll never get to better if you don't get on the road. You gotta get on the road in the middle of famine. They're traveling in the middle of a famine. Now, traveling is not fun anytime, but traveling in the middle of a famine is a very difficult time, because the famine is so severe that Jacob says, if you don't move, you're going to die.
In 2018, it was reported there was a dramatic rise in the number of cases of demonic possession. For many of the most disturbing cases, Father Carlos Martins was often summoned.
I have seen things, very evil things.
I order you to go in the name of Christ.
I'm not leaving. We've been together too long. He needs me.
Listen to The Exorcist Files on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Paper Ghosts is a true crime podcast investigating the mysterious disappearance and brutal, unsolved murder of Tammy Zawicki.
They just kept telling us from the beginning, she'll be back, she'll be back.
We had no clue where she was. Didn't know where to begin looking.
Tammy's story shocked the nation. The deeper I searched, the more troubling things I found.
The best lead, the best evidence, the best witness was blown off.
Listen to Paper Ghosts on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your favorite shows.
In 1967, Joseph Stalin's only daughter flees Russia for her new home, America.
Hello to everybody. I am very happy to be here.
That story alone is worthy of a podcast, but Svetlana is about what comes next, and it's the craziest story I've ever heard. It has KGB agents, a Frank Lloyd Wright commune, weird sex stuff, 3 Olgas, 2 Svetlanas, and 1 neurotic gay playwright. That's me. Listen to Svetlana on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, he is here. Roscoe, you hear him.
All day, baby. What I do is I come on in. I don't need no introduction. If you don't know me, you don't know music. You know what I'm saying? All day, what's up, Shirley?
Hey, Roscoe.
What's going on, Carly?
Hey, Roscoe, what's happening?
Hey, what's up, Mississippi? What's going on, Junior?
Man, Roscoe, my hero, boy.
My man, what? Hey, Tommy, what's happening with you, baby?
What's going on, Roscoe? How you doing?
Oh, ain't nothing, man. Just sitting up here just looking cool. You know what I mean? You get it in. Okay, what's going on today? What y'all want to talk about?
I wanted to ask you, Roscoe, if you went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I went on out there.
Yeah. Oh, you were there? Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Did you
work?
See?
Well, I went on out. I went on there. I talked to Rihanna. I went over the song playlist. What all I felt like she should do for all the playlists. And I had a meeting with the Navy. Her people's out there.
You're right. Her
Had a people with them. I slapped 4 of them. I told them, y'all don't tell me what to do, and you better not mention me. And have you ain't heard a word about me, have you?
No.
I slapped 4 of the top Navy people.
Okay.
Slapped in front of some other Navy folk.
Rihanna's Navy, though.
Yeah. Don't nobody fool with Rocco. Yeah, but I was out there. What else? What else you want to know?
Well, I just wanted to know, did you say anything? Did you help her with her halftime performance?
I just told you what I did. I helped her with the playlist. You ain't listening?
No. I heard you, but her performance.
Go ahead, Carly. You might want to ask me something a little bit more pointed.
Anyway.
I got you, Shirley.
Go ahead, Carla.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, Roscoe, you were on the field. Did you see Babyface? Were you there from the very beginning when the entertainment started? With
all
Face?
Entertainment. I'm Babyface. What the woman name that sang?
Shirley Ralph.
Yeah, I helped her rearrange that because we didn't have all day. I told her, a special time limit.
You didn't have all day. What do you mean?
We got to speed this up now. Come on. You can't be up here. Come on.
She was great.
I've been talking about him for years with this here. I tried to get Ray Charles to redo it. Ray Charles said he wasn't touching it.
Lift every voice. No.
No, I'm talking about Negro National Anthem.
Oh,
lift every voice.
Yeah, lift every voice. I couldn't get nobody to redo that.
Okay.
Finally, I got with Cheryl Lee Roth because, she got crushed on me. So I finally pulled her to the side and said, hey, baby.
Okay.
Oh, you ain't know.
No.
Cheryl Lee Wright been feeling me, man, long time.
What?
Really? Yeah. Okay. Since Dreamgirls days? Since way back then?
That personal business, though, I don't really like to discuss personal business.
You brought it up.
Oh, you draw the line.
My personal relationship is off to the limits. That's just off to the limits, We don't do that there. Yeah, the Super Bowl was good, y'all. Rihanna was up there. I told her stay still. I knew about the baby and everything.
You knew. Why you didn't tell us, Roscoe?
Nah, I just told y'all I don't do no personal business. I just said that.
It's off to the limits.
But you just said
it's off to the limits. What part of that is you not understanding? You going over there?
Now, did you get on one of the floating platforms? Did you get on there doing rehearsal?
Way up in the air?
No. I don't do that because I'm too talented. When you're super talented, you don't need flying and props and lights and smoke and mirrors and all that here. I just get a keyboard, going up do my thing. You know what I'm saying?
Will there ever be a year when you will perform the halftime show at the Super Bowl? Have you been asked, Roscoe?
You know, they have not asked. I don't think they're going to ever ask because they know I'm going to come out there and put everybody on Front Street. You know, I know Jay-Z running everything now. He ain't said nothing to me. You know.
No. Yeah.
But, you know, but his grandfather had mentioned me to him, but he never said nothing.
Who did he say?
I know. I don't know.
His grandfather, Cozy.
Jay-Z's grandfather, Cozy.
Yeah, we used to call him Cozy for short.
Roscoe, would you introduce what's coming up next, a prank phone call with the nephew?
Ladies and gentlemen, stick around. My boy Tommy Tom come over with another one incredible praise.
Right after this.
You're listening to the Steve Harvey Morning Show.
Paper Ghosts is a true crime podcast investigating the mysterious disappearance and brutal, unsolved murder of Tammy Zawicki.
They just kept telling us from the beginning, she'll be back, she'll be back.
We had no clue where she was. Didn't know where to begin looking.
Tammy's story shocked the nation. The deeper I searched, the more troubling things I found.
The best lead, the best evidence, the best witness was blown off.
Listen to Paper Ghosts on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your favorite shows.
In 1967, Joseph Stalin's only daughter flees Russia for her new home, America.
Hello to everybody. I am very happy to be here.
That story alone is worthy of a podcast, but Svetlana is about what comes next, and it's the craziest story I've ever heard. It has KGB agents, a Frank Lloyd Wright commune, weird sex stuff, 3 Olgas, 2 Svetlanas, and 1 neurotic gay playwright. That's me. Listen to Svetlana on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
When my daughter ran off to hop trains, I was terrified I'd never see her again, so I followed her.
We should point out that among psychologists who are leery of IQ as the best predictor of success in the long run, the vast majority of those psychologists, whose opinion I do not agree with, by the way, is that the thing that predicts better than IQ is the capacity to delay gratification. And that seems to be associated with trait conscientiousness. And trait conscientiousness, which is dutifulness and industriousness and orderliness, the ability to make and maintain verbal contracts, conscientiousness is the best predictor of long-term success outside of general cognitive ability. I would also say that in cultures where families are more likely to be intact, and so we could say Southeast Asian cultures, for example, and point out that children from Southeast Asian cultures do disproportionately better in North America than children of North American parents. The reason for that seems twofold. One is more correlational, perhaps, in that those families are much more likely to be intact and so to have fathers. But the second is that the advantage that is accrued to those children seems to be in the domain of conscientious striving. It's work ethic, it's the ability to delay gratification. And so if it is the case that father involvement is a key predictor of the capacity to delay gratification, then that's an absolutely crucial issue. And we need to know, well, is that true? And we also need to know if it's true, why it's true. And perhaps it has something to do with the relative disagreeability of fathers. So women are more prone to negative emotion than men, and they're more empathic and compassionate and polite than men. Men are more disagreeable, and disagreeableness is the best predictor, by the way, of criminal behavior from the personality perspective, even though it's not a very good predictor. But if you're really, really disagreeable, that's one of the things that can land you in jail because you don't take other people into account. You can be callous and cruel and unkind. But just because something has its pathologies in the extreme doesn't mean it's not necessary in moderation. And disagreeable people are better at saying no and at setting boundaries and at being cruel to be kind, let's say. Well, sure, you're good at that. You want to do that, but here's what it's going to take. And I'm going to draw boundaries and I'm going to draw lines. And you think that's fathers. And what evidence do you have for that?
Oh my goodness. for example, one of the things I'll talk about is the difference between boundary setting and boundary enforcement. And dads and moms will both set boundaries very similarly. They'll both say, you can't have your ice cream until you finish your peas. And children will test boundaries pretty much exactly the same way. They'll have as few peas as possible before they get their ice cream.
Absolutely. And they balance on that edge and push because they want to find out exactly where that border is. My son, who's relatively disagreeable, man, he pushed boundaries at every opportunity when he was between 2 and 4. It was really something to behold. He was a force of nature in going right up to the line and pushing on it just to see what was going to happen, and so go ahead.
Yeah, but the difference between moms and dads is not the boundary setting or the children's challenge, but rather the boundary enforcement. The child will be able to say to mom some version of like, I had a tough time in school today. I really felt down because I was teased by this boy, and he's the most popular boy or the most popular girl in the school. Usually would be the boy that would tease him. And so mom is saying to herself, well, what am I going to do here? Am I going to get into a big argument over a few peas when he's depressed? That would be insensitive and stupid. So I'll tell you what, sweetie, you can have this many more peas and then you can have your ice cream. And then the boy will see, negotiating or a girl will see, negotiating is a possibility here. So
from a position of weakness.
Yes, exactly. I will have half that many peas that mom, set aside. And then mom is going again, all right, now he at least tried. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Okay, you can have the ice cream now. Whereas dad is much more likely to go, I'm sorry, we have a deal here, sweetie. I know you had a bad day in school, but you need to finish the peas. The deal is before you get your ice cream. Oh, Daddy, you're so mean. Mommy doesn't do that to me. She went
mean, yeah.
And Dad goes, well, you can continue to complain, but this is my rules now. And if you continue to complain, there'll be no more ice cream. There'll be no ice cream, even as a possibility tomorrow night. Now we're forcing, the child is getting forced to have to pay attention to doing what she or he needs to do, finish the peas before she or he gets the ice cream, what they want to have.
Okay, so let me take what you said apart a little bit from a personality perspective. Okay, so I'm going to hit it from 3 perspectives. So the first is, I've always been entranced by the Disney movie Pinocchio, and Pinocchio is about the development of an autonomous individual, right? Someone who's free from having his strings pulled by others and who isn't a wooden head, but someone who's alive and can think for himself. And as Pinocchio develops, he faces a number of temptations. And one is to become an actor, which means to become a deceiver or a player of parts rather than the real thing. But another is to become a neurotic wreck who wants vacations. So he's tempted by Pleasure Island. And the way the fox and the cat tempt him is by convincing him that he's ill, convincing him to capitalize on that, and convincing him that the respite for his illness is a permanent vacation from his responsibility. So the temptations are deceitful actor and neurotic victim. So it's a very perspicacious film. It's a remarkable film. But in any case, now let's take that apart a little bit. So I'll first make an observation from my own marriage. My wife is no pushover, and she's relatively low in agreeableness by female standards. But what I observed in our relationship was that it was hard for her to discipline the children, especially when they were very young. And I think the reason for that was partly temperament, because I think the feminine temperament tilts towards compassion and nurturance, whereas the masculine temperament tilts more towards
tough love.
Yeah, fine. That's good. Thank you for filling in there. Yeah, it's conditional. There's a conditional element to it, and a judgmental element.
Not conditional love, by the way, but conditional approval as part of total love.
Right. Good clarification. Absolutely. Right, because the container is love.
Yes.
But that can mean delay of gratification, right? And there's a cruelty in delay of gratification, even when you impose it on yourself. It's a cruelty in the local sense because it causes distress. I mean, right now, my son and daughter are teaching their son, who's only slightly over 1, no. And I told them how to do it. So, for example, he sits at our table out in the backyard and he reaches behind and he's tearing the plants out of the green wall that's behind him. And so that's a no. And I said, I encouraged them. I said, look, take his hand, hold it firmly so that he can't move it, say no, hold him until he stops struggling to undertake his goal-directed activity. He'll probably cry. As soon as he stops resisting, let go and give him
Enjoy its Sabbath. As long as it lies desolate, it shall have rest, the rest which it had not in your Sabbaths when you dwelt upon it. And as for those of you that are left, I will send faintness into their hearts in the lands of their enemies. The sound of a driven leaf shall put them to flight, and they shall flee as one flees from the sword. They shall fall when none pursues. They shall stumble over one another as if to escape a sword, though none pursues, and you shall have no power to stand before your enemies. And you shall perish among the nations, and the land of your enemies shall eat you up. And those of you that are left shall pine away in your enemies' lands because of their iniquity, and also because of the iniquities of their fathers they shall pine away like them. But if they confess their iniquity, and the iniquity of their fathers in their treachery which they committed against me, and also in walking contrary to me, so that I walked contrary to them and brought them into the lands of their enemies, if then their uncircumcised heart is humbled, and they make amends for their iniquity, then I will remember my covenant with Jacob, and I will remember my covenant with Isaac and my covenant with Abraham, and I will remember the land. But the land shall be left by them, and enjoy its Sabbaths while it lies desolate without them. And they shall make amends for their iniquity, because they spurned my ordinances, and their soul abhorred my statutes. Yet for all that, when they are in the land of their enemies, I will not spurn them, neither will I abhor them so as to destroy them utterly and break my covenant with them. For I am the Lord their God. But I will for their sake remember the covenant with their forefathers, whom I brought forth out of the land of Egypt in the sight of the nations, that I might be their God. I am the Lord. These are the statutes and ordinances and laws which the Lord made between him and the sons of Israel on Mount Sinai by Moses. Psalm 82, a plea for justice, a psalm of Asaph. God has taken his place in the divine council. In the midst of the angels, he holds judgment. How long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? Give justice to the weak and the fatherless. Maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute. Rescue the weak and the needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked. They have neither knowledge nor understanding. They walk about in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are shaken. I say, you are gods, sons of the Most High, all of you. Nevertheless, you shall die like men and fall like any prince. Arise, O God, judge the earth, for to you belong all the nations. Father in heaven, we thank you for sharing your heart with us. We thank you so much for your commandments. We thank you for revealing to us your heart and how we are called to offer you our heart. Thank you for sharing your word with us today. And we ask you, please, be with us in all of our moments of darkness, our moments of light, moments we turn away from you, and the moments where we find ourselves deep, deep in your most sacred heart. We make this prayer, Father, in the name of your only begotten Son, Jesus Christ, our Lord, in the power of the Holy Spirit. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. So there is something remarkable to talk about today. Just two quick things. One is going to be a review of a day before, and the other is today. So a bit ago, yesterday, I believe, where the Lord, through Moses, was calling upon the people to offer their offerings. Actually, it was 2 days ago. My goodness, the days fly by. One of the things that God instructed through Moses in Leviticus, it's here's what you must offer. Here is the grain offering, the cereal offering, right? Here's the libation offering. Here's the different burnt offerings that God demands, right? They're necessary. But a couple days ago, God was making it very clear. It was in Exodus chapter 34 and 35, where he had said this earlier in Exodus, but it said, anyone whose heart moves them to make a free will offering, anyone in whom the Spirit of God has moved and they want to give out of their generosity, come before the Lord and bring all these things, right? The gold or silver or the blue, purple, scarlet stuff, fine linen, goat's hairs, whatever you have. There's something there about God saying, there is an element where here's the worship that's demanded me. Here's the sacrifice that is required of you. But there's something that goes to the heart. And again, the sacrifice, when we offer the sacrifice that's required of us, that is true sacrifice, right? That's true worship. But there are many times when God says, if you would like to go beyond that, if the Holy Spirit in you is moving you to give beyond that, then here's an opportunity. In fact, the people of God, the people of Israel, were moved so deeply, so fully by that generosity, by that Spirit of God, that he's here at the end, or gosh, what was that, in the middle of chapter 36, where God, through Moses, had to say, okay, stop. The people were restrained from bringing, for the stuff they had was sufficient to do all the work and more. And this is a reminder for all of us. There are some things we offer to the church, right, in support of our parish, our local parish, or support of the church ministries around the world. But also as Catholic Christians and also all Christians, we're called to allow the Lord to move our hearts to generosity, to supply for the needs of the people around us. Can you imagine? You know that I think the statistic is something along these lines, that 7% of every parish provides for 90% or more of the parish work. That only 7% of the folks who are in a parish provide for the volunteering, provide for the financial workings of a parish. And just imagine, I know Matthew Kelly had once asked this, he said, imagine, what if we increased that? Not just like, doubled it to 14%. What if we increased it 1%? I mean, imagining that all of the stuff the church does throughout the world, incredibly great stuff, not only locally, but also globally, internationally. Imagine if 8% of Catholics supported that work. Imagine how many people could be blessed. Imagine how many people, we're to get to the point, what if we got to the point where even 10% of a parish was supporting the working of the parish? How much more good could be done? Imagine getting to the place where we were so generous with our time, with our talent, with our treasure, that we would have to say, actually, stop giving. Wouldn't that be amazing? Here's Moses who says, let neither man nor woman do anything more for the offering for the sanctuary. So the people were restrained from bringing, for the stuff they had was sufficient to do all the work and more. I know that today, as I'm reflecting on a couple days ago, and even reflecting on what God commands to be done and crafted in his tabernacle, what I'm called to reflect upon and be convicted about is, am I that generous? Because if I were more generous, then at some point, the people who are suffering around the world would cease to suffer, at least from lack. And so I have to ask God, how are you calling me to offer what I have? How are you calling me to offer even just a bit more? Because again, sacrifice is required for love. And so that's what we're called upon to be able to offer the Lord. So that was kind of a reflection from a couple days ago that just kind of caught up to me today as I was praying about this. And hopefully it's caught up to you as you're praying about this and read.
Thank you. You're very welcome. I give you a lesson, and I know that you have a specific position that colors any comments that you're going to make. Now, that does not mean that you are going to shove your position down someone's throat, but you do have a position. And why a certain
I wouldn't run for office, though. And the reason I wouldn't run for office, well, there are many reasons. One reason being that an honest person could never win. But the main reason is because, let's face facts. I have very strong points of view, and I don't know that I could be very tolerant of the point of view of the majority of the people many times. And I do believe a politician does have to be sensitive to what his constituents want. Mm-hmm. And I don't believe you could be a good politician and not be sensitive to the masses.
Can I say, I think this is a little beside the point. No one is denying people like Pat Robertson the freedom to run for office, or anyone with any particular view, or Ronald Reagan to say a prayer privately, or even say a prayer in a public ceremony. What our organization is stating is that people who hold fundamentalist and extreme religious views, they are a danger to society in that they want to bring us backwards. They're anti-progressive. They want to go back 2,000 years in thought. Where the liberals in this country, the people who are progressive, want the human mind to advance. We want society to go forward. We feel, many of us feel, that religion is a stagnation of the human mind. And anyone who's in a progressive society, anyone like Robertson or or Reagan, who thinks that there's an authority higher than the human mind, like the Bible, is a dangerous person. We see that in Iran right now. And it's not that we're denying him the right to have his views or even to get elected. If he did, Ronald Reagan got elected and we moved the country quite a bit to the right. That's fine. That's America. That's beautiful. That's our system. But we feel it's time to champion liberal thought, progressive thought, and that fundamentalism in our government is dangerous for the main reason that the Bible is held to be the ultimate authority. And this country, being a pluralistic country, is a country of diversity. There are Hindus, there are Zoroastrians, there are Christians, there are atheists. And we feel that no one small group has the right to impose its morality on the rest of the country by dogmatic means. And most fundamentalists, I don't know about Jim, but most fundamentalists think that the world should be a theocracy, that it should be run by God, that the principles of the Bible, the principles that Jesus spoke and that God speaks are those principles that this country should be run by, and we disagree. We think that's a step backwards. That's the real point.
Well, I would respond by saying that I certainly do not think that fundamentalism is a step backwards. I think the progressive thought that the atheistic societies would engender and would push for is not progressive at all. It has been around for thousands of years and has led to the downfall of many a civilization. It
for
is
example?
Not. Well, for example, everyone always brings up the example of the Roman Empire and the moral decay that ate at it from the inside and the outside.
After Christianity came.
Well, when you say Christianity, you must define what you're talking about. Are you talking about institutionalized religion, or are you talking about Christianity that's based upon the Scriptures? There's
well,
a vast difference there.
Historical, cultural Christianity.
Well, see, there you're dealing with a system rather than with the belief itself.
But it is Christianity. It's based on the Bible. It's Judeo-Christian God.
I would definitely disagree with you.
It was not Hindu. It was not Islam. It was not Buddhism.
Allow me to finish my point. The point is that very soon, about 400 or 500 years after Christ, you have the production of a religious system that, and since I'm sure you said you came from a fundamentalist background and would know this, is not in any way the same faith as a fundamentalist would discuss today. And many fundamentalists would not even identify it as being the same.
But it was Christianity. Culturally, it was Christianity.
If you want to identify it that as such, you may.
Yes, it was.
But I would not identify it as the Christianity which is based upon the Scripture.
On your
let me give you an example.
Christianity.
Well, let me give you an example. One of the common objections made, common things brought up by atheists and others, and it's happened many times here on the air, is that Christianity is in some way a form of slavery for women. And they will point to this, that, or the other thing. I recall Ben Ackerley, the author of the X-Rated Bible, of course, brought up a number of quotes concerning that subject when I spoke with him here on the station. But the point of the fact is that ignores what we're actually talking about. Mr. Barker is exactly right. We are talking about the Bible when we talk about fundamentalism, when we talk about Christianity, and that really ignores the scriptural teaching concerning it. And someone who would say that for some reason Jesus Christ enslaved women or something like that, or that Christianity is somehow a slam against women, is either very ignorant of the facts or is willfully changing the facts. We're
going to take a break here. And Dan, we left off with you.
Jim, you said that atheism was a religion, and that could be a true statement if religion is defined as a group that binds people culturally or perhaps philosophically. If you define religion, as most people do in a popular way, as having some belief in a supernatural realm, then of course atheists are not religious. We, the members of the Freedom from Religion Foundation in Madison, Wisconsin, are sort of an umbrella group for people who call themselves agnostics, atheists, humanists, secularists, rationalists. And I would not say that we are a religious group, although we have taken a position on a religious question. But it is not true to say that atheists are religious. We do not worship some transcendent being or outside of ourselves. If you want to call respect for the human mind worship, then yes, depending on how you define the word. I would accept atheism as religious in a very, very narrow sense of the word.
Well, the way I meant it was the fact that atheism does indeed have a supreme power, and that is you yourself and yourself.
Well, that's not true, Jim.
Well,
it's not supreme. It's very limited.
Well, supreme I'm not talking about supreme over the universe, I'm talking about supreme over yourself. And in that realm, atheism is just as much a viewpoint that makes claims concerning the religious issues as any other viewpoint.
Now, it's not necessarily true. Atheism doesn't make a statement. Atheism is merely the lack of belief in God. Some atheists might believe in astrology.
No.
Some atheists might believe in ESP, but atheism does not make a positive statement. We merely say that we are justified in not holding a belief in God.
I don't think that is a consistent position. Even the Supreme Court has ruled that humanism can be defined as a religious statement or a religious viewpoint.
For legal purposes, yeah.
Well, certainly. And so you do make statements, whether they be negative or positive, it's still a statement. Confusing my having a positive statement concerning the existence of deity, and you're saying a negative statement, there is no existence of deity.
I
we
don't
could
say
change
that,
it around.
But I don't say that.
What do you say?
I do not say there is no God. I say that I do not have a belief in God. There might be a God.
Mm-hmm.
I can't prove that there's not, and I would like for you to perhaps try to prove that there is. And if you do, I will accept your proof. I'm not saying that God does not exist. I'm just saying that I, as a human being, am without grounds for belief and am justified in being atheistic, not a theist.
Well, you came out of a theistic position. Why did you come out of a theistic position?
Because there is no